Hey, fourth grade art friends, it's Mrs. Herbay. I hope you're chugging through finishing up your cakes. I was going to just give you, last week we talked about the shadows that go kind of on the inside part of the cake and on the outside edges, and then some of the little darker nooks and crannies where there's shadows cast. And then we also talked about how we could put some highlights on the higher areas of some of the things on our cake to make it look more realistic. One of the other things I wanted to show you guys was, so I have this cake up here on top, and it's you might say, well, why is it different colors? I was showing some friends at school how you can kind of layer the oil pastels, and so I was using some different colors. But what I also wanted to do was kind of show you guys also what you can do with the icing on the outside part of the cake too, depending on what you want to accomplish. So, for example, this light pink happened because I took, and you also want to make sure when you look at your white oil pastel, especially, you want to make sure that it's not dirty from coloring before. So I put a little bit of that white there, and then I took some of the pink, and then I just kind of blended that to get sort of that light pink color. You can also take the red, and by putting just a little bit of red and then blending that too, then I get like a little bit of a darker pink. So it's like the red over top of the white, or the pink over top of the white, kind of gives you some different looks. And so the same would be true for when you go to do the icing. Just for fun, I'm gonna make the icing in here blue. So I'm gonna put this like light blue icing in between those two cake layers. So I've got it filled in, but it doesn't look super 3D yet. So just to review from last week, one of the things you could do is you could either take like, so I'm taking the red to kind of create a darker shadow in there, which you can do. I can do that down here too. Now with the chocolate, you kind of have to use the black. So I'm just kind of putting that little bit of a black line there. And then it's just a smudgy wudgy with your finger. And you can do a little bit here. And a little bit goes a really long way. So you don't really have to draw like this big, heavy, thick black line. If you just make sort of a little mark and then smudge it, it kind of helps you. And then you can also do it on the outside edge here. Okay, and you can see it's starting to come alive and look a little bit more realistic. You can also then add your highlight. Also, another thing to consider is if your finger has black on it, you might want to wipe it off so you don't smudge black over top of your white. And then I'm just kind of coloring the white a little bit. And the white, you don't necessarily have to smudge as much, because sometimes when you smudge the white, it disappears, and you don't want it to disappear. Okay, so there's that. Now, if we were doing icing, and I may have showed you this, but I'm just going to review again. If you were doing white icing, like this whipped cream, you're going to color everything white, and you're going to say, well, it doesn't look like anything. I'm even coloring where this whipped cream part is here. Okay, so now I colored all this whole section white. And then what you can do is, depending on, you can take Like there's this gray here. And so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of like, I'm kind of outlining underneath where these little things of icing are, because they're hanging over the edge, so they're creating like a shadow down on the cake. So I'm kind of creating a shadow there. And then I'm also going to kind of smudge around so rather than use black, which is a little bit harsh, you can kind of use the gray too sometimes. And I'm just kind of outlining some of the lines of the icing with the gray. And it's kind of showing up a little bit. I might just put a tiny, I didn't mean to draw that kind of like that. I might just put a tiny little bit of black in some of these parts to create even more contrast for the shadows, but not too much. And I can also do some here on this edge. And maybe over here on this edge a little bit. Now some of you may want to add like sprinkles or other things on top of the cake, and that's what you're going to add last. So you're going to kind of do all your shadows, your highlights, your coloring in, and then, for example, let's say I wanted these to be kind of sprinkles or something else fun on the cake. So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and draw your sprinkles or whatever your other decorations are. It doesn't show up quite as well. But you'll add those decorations last. Oops, I don't want brown. I think I want red. So there I'm putting my sprinkles on like that. Okay. And so then you can kind of see how that section is now done. So kind of what I like to do is work in sections. And then what I would probably do is then do the other side here. So again, I would take my white, but make sure it's nice and clean. Then I'm going to go ahead and color this side. Color in the icing part. So I got that layer down. And then I'll start with my gray. Kind of outlining the bottoms here. Put some shadows here on this side here. Making some outlines and shadows for that. Just putting a little bit of gray along the side here. So now I have a little bit of shading, and it's kind of subtle and delicate with the gray. And then the last part will be with just a tiny little bit of black and smudging. And because you already have that layer of white down, it helps you to kind of smooth and smudge. There. And maybe a little down here too. Okay. And then again, I this fun stuff on the outside of the cake. Then I would add those details last. Here's my sprinkles. And you can, as you look at it, you can see like, oh, maybe I want a little more shadow here. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker there. Just to give it a little more contrast. And then I would finish up the top of the cake, and then I still need to finish this part over here. So take the rest of this week to finish up your cakes. And then next week we'll talk about finishing the cakes. We're going to cut these out and we're going to make a platter for the cakes to sit on. And it's going to be kind of fun. So I hope you guys had a great spring break, and I can't wait to see your cakes.